Welcome back. This is I don't know what that means.
What that means.
It's our podcast. I'm Jen.
Graeme.
Welcome back. Or welcome for the first time.
If you're just coming here for the first time, we are very disappointed. This is our 5th episode, so you need to get your shit together.
I think what Graeme means is thanks so much for joining us, and there's more episodes for you to hear. He doesn't mean that. He meant what he said. That's kind of the point.
I am capable of telling you.
Yeah, you're good at jokes. It was a great
This
joke.
whole podcast is a joke.
Okay. No, it's not.
It's very serious.
It's very serious. And today we're talking about a very serious subject. Sort of. Not really.
I mean...
Is it serious to you?
Yes.
All right. Well, we're talking about food, you guys.
We're talking about food.
Yeah, we did an episode about travel, and food came up as one of the things that make travel a whole ass thing, as is the title of that episode. And so then we thought, you know what? I bet we could talk about food for a whole episode. And so here we are.
Yeah.
I mean, I could just talk about food because I fucking love it, but it's in the context of our relationship, kind of a different thing where we got to meet in the middle sometimes. So we're going to share that with you.
True. It also comes up in the birthday.
Huh.
You know, it's food is hard for me. And I think for a lot of other people for kind of a lot of reasons. I'm just thinking about how, like, I have not always historically had a very good relationship with food. And I don't know how heavily that's informed by, like, my issues or my, like, neurodivergent derived issues around food. You know what I mean? Like, how much of that is just because of my brain wiring makes things hard for me, and how much of it is just, like, you know, sort of external factors. But yeah, I'm not, my beloved is a self-identified, self-stated big fan of food. And I am not really, I'm that awful person that foodies hate where I'm like, if I could just have, like, flavorless nutrient sludge, like, twice a day or whatever and never have to think about it, that would be fine with me. I think that sometimes people come to that in a different direction. I think you sometimes get the, like, programmer types who are looking for something that makes them 8% more efficient at converting calories into JavaScript or whatever, but
I don't think that Venn diagram is unoverlapping.
No, absolutely. There is a close thing. But yeah, I mean, nutrient sludge, that sounds great. Honestly, like, zero prep time, no choices to make, texture issues, no consistency issues, no flavor issues. Like, just get it done. You know, like, I know that I need nutrition. Let's just skip all the stuff in the middle and just, like, have it finished, and then I don't have to stress.
I understand that to a degree where, like, I do wish I was like that because saying I love food is one thing, but, like, I don't have a good relationship with food. Like, I think you remember we were watching that Taylor Tomlinson. She had that tag about emotional eating, and I had the exact same one because it's like, I just eat when I'm awake, and it's like I am always hungry, but also, like, that emotional eating aspect of liking food is very real. And, like, I've spent a lot of my adult life trying to, like, separate, like, I feel good because I'm eating from, just I feel good. So we both have issues. I think they come from different places, and nutrient sludge might solve a lot of our problems, but I don't think we live in that world. So
no, and every time I see attempts at that kind of thing, you know, I have a sneaky suspicion that Soylent was, like, kind of originally theorized in that way.
Is the joke a name? Do you know about that? Like, why did we do that?
I think because he thought it was funny.
I mean, it's hilarious, but, like, the fact that people are out here just, like, chugging Soylent, me as a horror fan, I'm never gonna not think of Soylent Green, and I'm sure everybody kind of, like, who is aware of that film, it's fucking same.
Yeah, every once in a while I think there's, like, one of those, like, revelatory moments on the internet where, like, a whole new class of people or a whole new group of people finds out something that is, like, kind of common knowledge, and we're far enough removed from that film, and then it's based on, what is it on?
I don't know, to be honest.
Well, anyway, we're far enough removed from that that like it's kind of outside of the cultural zeitgeist. Like for people not to know that there's a movie, for people not to get that the name.
I mean, I could see like if you're a 20-year-old, you've never heard of that. Okay,
Yeah,
fine, but like I think it's fucking hilarious. Just
sure.
saying.
And I assume I don't really know like what it's made of. I assume that soy
It's
is
fucking people.
well.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
I assume that soy is like a large constituent of that beverage, but yeah, I don't know. Obviously, there's no chance that that person didn't know what they were. And at this point, I it's just become enough of like a branding.
Hmm. All right. Well, sorry, that was kind of a tangent I was curious about. Um, I asked because I know that you just like research things sometimes. I thought you might know offhand.
Yeah, I do be like that. There's actually probably an episode in that. But yeah, no, so I mean, like I said, I love the idea of just something like that. I am trying Huel at the moment. They also have term names. There is no like nutritionally complete beverage powder whatever that has like a decent name.
Yeah, the last one I tried was called Super Gut.
Yeah, that's not good. Soylent is
This has just turned into a slamming protein drink.
right, and
Sorry,
it's going to
guys.
make it very hard for us to be sponsored by Soylent or Huel in the future.
I feel like if we did a video as well podcast, they would quickly be like, I don't know if we want them to.
But yeah, sort of diving into my list. The first thing that this will make a lot of sense to any autistic or autistic adjacent people is the texture of food, just the way that it feels in your mouth. I personally have a ton of difficulty with like squishy, mushy foods. Mashed potatoes are not for me. I don't know what mushy peas are, but the sound of it makes me a little like, bah. So that and like the just consistency of things. Sorry, I was reminded that we were talking about boba. So boba, I guess, is a good example of you were saying that like
I
a
hate
texture.
boba tea. I
Yeah,
hate jello. I hate anything that reminds me of boogers. And that is what boba tea reminds me of.
somehow we got through those oysters.
We tried them. Like, well, that's the interesting thing to me. Like, one of the things that I think is different about our approach to food is I will try anything once before I'm like, that's disgusting, and I'm not trying it again for a real long time. And I had never had oysters before. And whenever we went to Boston, we tried them. And I was like, I don't need to be doing that for at least 10 years. I am all set. Gross.
Question answered. I don't have a lot of. I don't really have any particular memory of that, and I think an important note about this, which is relevant to both why I don't remember it and also the fact that I was able to even try this to begin with, is that
Bringing up liquid courage.
we had 8 beers. We had some beerses, just sort of like stumbling drunkenly around Boston, and we went to the Union Oyster House, and
And no shade to Union Oyster House. Like, everything's not for me, but those oysters were foul.
no, absolutely. I've been there with friends before who are like seafood people, seafood fans, or people who like oysters or whatever, and just watch people like just consume oysters by the numbers in quantity, whatever. And I'm given to understand that if you are a fan of oysters, the Union Oyster House is like the place to go. Unfortunately for me, I have no desire to do that sober. Like I know what they look like and I know how they have been described to me, like the texture has been described to me. And the notion of something being sort of slimy and rubbery and yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. It's like I said, everything doesn't have to be for me.
yeah. So and that's a really good example of kind of how it'll be for us, for autistic people is just like, you know, some texture that will set you off or some texture that you just cannot tolerate. You know, I know that for a lot of people, it is like kind of mushy things like that. I'm really particular about a French fry, right? If you come at me with like a very lightly fried, like a steak fry, something that's big and is like a hunk of potato or whatever, I'm not into that. But you bring me like a pommes frites, something that's really narrow and doesn't have like the kind of mushy squishiness of potato, but is like crispy. That is my jam. That I can do. And an interesting thing about that, I don't really know like the science or the rationale or whatever behind this, but apparently people with ADHD tend to like crunchy foods or like crispy foods. Something about the sensation in the mouth, I guess. I don't know.
I would like to know who doesn't like crunchy food.
Fair point. Fair point. Yeah, so like a French fry for me is a balancing act because the ADHD loves stuff that's crispy. Um, the autism is like I do not want a food that is pre-mushed. Like that's what I got teeth for.
Pre-mushed. That's the culinary term.
So anytime we'll ever go somewhere and you're like, hey, do you want to get some fries? I always have to be like kind of in theory on principle, but like I don't remember if they do like the greater potato to fried crispy rind ratio that there is in favor of potato, the less I'm going to be into it.
Well, sometimes you have to fuck around to find out. So
Yeah.
at least that works out in our benefit a lot of the time because I'll be like, we'll try the fries. Who cares?
Yeah. Yeah, texture, consistency, strong smells can really be a thing for people, or like strong flavors can set people off sometimes. Tangentially, I've known people who've had migraines like very frequently set off by strong smells. So like a lot of times you kind of have to avoid people who like wear perfumes a lot, or you can't really like have like strong scented candles around the house and things like that. Mine are a little bit like that, where like kind of powerful scents can usually not trigger migraines, but like I get very headachy around that
I'm
kind of
gonna
thing.
say they trigger you.
Yeah. Um,
I've been scolded more than once for having a takeout box in the car.
yeah, there are a few food smells that are not for me. Yeah, smells, flavors, things like that. So like any kind of strong sensory component to food can be difficult. And if you look at like the things that I eat, a lot of it is pretty bland. It's not like super flavorful, and that's I think part of it is just that, like I'll eat a sleeve of saltines just like by itself without toppings or anything, just eating crackers. And I would never say that I'm like having fun doing it. I'm never like, man,
I
fuck
should
yeah,
hope
saltines.
not. Like that would bum me out, frankly.
Right.
Like
But
he's really liking these saltines.
just so into these crackers, um, these flavorless crackers. But it comes back to kind of what we were saying earlier, where like a lot of times I'll be like, well, I have to eat. Like this is a physical requirement to not die, but like I can't make any decisions about it. I don't want to do any kind of work to have to do it, and so like it's just there and it gets the job done, and there's not like there's no fuss about it. And the other thing is kind of the other meaning of consistency in that sense is that like every tube of saltines is the same, so I know what I'm getting when I open a thing of saltines.
Mm-hmm.
Consistency in that sense is what makes things like fruits and vegetables difficult, because you can't tell, from one fruit to the next, one strawberry to the next, like this one might be mushy and that one might be like sort of hard and that one might be like really juicy and this one might be sweet, and there's not enough consistency to it, that like every time I pick up, a raspberry or whatever out of the thing, I'm like, I'm taking a chance here that I don't like what happens. Fruits and vegetables I think can be really hard in that way, and that's, you see people who are autistic, and a lot of times we have like, I don't want to say childish diets, but like very sort of simple. And a lot of times we like fast food because we know what we're getting. It's going to be the same as last time. It's going to be the same the next time we get it, and either we like it or it's fine. Like the saltines. I'm never like craving a thing of saltines, but I'm like, I got to eat something, and nothing sounds good, and I can't make any decisions, and I don't have the spoons to, cook or order food or whatever. Like this is just here and it will solve the problem. If you ask autistics about their like safe food lists, a lot of it comes up as like, stuff that you would expect from kids.
Tell people what safe food means again.
So a safe food is a food that is safe. It is a food item that is typically like reliably fine. It's either something that you actually like, or it's something that like, like I said, will solve the problem that is I am hungry. And you can trust that food, I guess. You know that it will be, what you're going to get out of it, and there aren't going to be any unpleasant surprises or whatever. So for me, a good example, this is going to horrify people. I would say that I have eaten a frozen pizza for dinner the vast majority of nights for more than 20 years.
Well, can confirm for the last nearly 2 years.
Truly. Yeah, but I go through frozen pizzas at a rate of about one a day. And it's never like, it really is solving the problem of hunger, right? It's like, I know I got to eat something. But like this thing is, the least amount of effort that you can possibly make in terms of like processing food. It's just like put it in the oven and wait. I know that that experience is going to be the same as the last time, and I know that it's going to be fine. It's passable. Partly out of neurodivergence, and I think partly just out of having a fucked up relationship to food. I don't ever really expect that food is going to be good. You know, like it's very rare that I will be looking at something, even in like a restaurant or whatever, and be like, this is going to be better than this solves the problem of being hungry. You know, and I'm just like, I'm never like excited about food in that way, which is genuinely a bummer, especially being with somebody like you.
I'm like a fat dog. If you're like, what should we have for dinner? I just start like dancing around like, ooh, I don't know.
But you know, and that actually kind of brings me to another point, is just like the notion of like adventurous eating. You are not my first like foodie partner, and I have always felt this general sense of being like, God, it must suck to be dating me.
I mean, I feel like that goes both ways.
See, for me, it's not, because like I know that I am the limiting factor, and like I know that about myself. So a lot of times we will go out, um, you know, for the listeners, a lot of times we'll go out to eat somewhere, um, and Jen will try very hard to make suggestions for places that we can go where she knows there'll be something for me, which is very sweet, and I love it. It frustrates me a lot sometimes, because my perspective on us going out to eat is literally whatever you want. Like whatever sounds good to you, let's go and do that. And I will find something, because that's always the way that I've had to be. You know, and I'm so used to the notion of being like, let's go somewhere where there's something that you're excited about and that you want to get. And I will just find whatever, you know, whatever combination of like wheat and hot
like
dairy.
when you say that, you're like failing to understand, like, I also can find anything anywhere. So it's not like, oh no, I can't eat it XYZ because reasons. I'm like, there's food there. It'll be fine.
Sure, but you know, I love you and I want you to be happy, and it's also sort of an aspect of my personality that I tend to be kind of people pleaser, and I'm like, look, most of the time that we're going out to eat somewhere, not even most of the time, every time, it's because you want to do that, you know. And I'm not saying like you're twisting my arm or whatever. I'm happy to do it, but I have never, in the course of our relationship or in any relationship that I've ever been in, been like, hey, let's go get food, other than being like, I'm assuming you're hungry, you know, or like it's dinner time. It's like let's go do that. But I'm never like for myself being like, ooh, I'm excited to get whatever this food thing might be, you know? And so because that's kind of my relationship to food, and because I'm so used to just being like, let's go wherever and I'll find something, like I'll be all right. It doesn't bother me to do that. I feel more like I'm a problem or a burden or whatever when the decision is like placed on me to like try and find something, because I can't make that decision for myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and feeling like I'm deciding for you in a way that like limits your options or whatever, like feels bad to me. So it's, you know, we do have that very typical like relationship, like, I don't know, what do you want? I don't know, what do you want, kind of thing. And I'm like,
oh yeah, tale as old as time.
Right. In my case, like it's not me deflecting or anything. Like I literally don't know what I want to eat, because nothing ever sounds good to me. Like there's never, it's so rare that I'm ever like, ooh, I want, you know, such and such a thing. So, you know, for us trying to decide like where to go to eat or what kind of food we want to get or whatever is always hard. And the other thing that's a real pain in the ass about that is that being ADHD, a common feature of ADHD is object constancy, which is like object permanence, only you're a grown up. You know, with object permanence, with, you know, babies and whatever, once they don't see something, they literally do not know that it exists any longer. They don't have the notion that like it exists, but it's just out of their vision. For me, I know that these things, like, I know that I put down this coffee mug and turn my back and it doesn't go away. I know that it's still there. I just forget that it's there. I forget that it exists, essentially. So the other thing about that is that I only remember like the last 3 or 4 places that we go to eat. So anytime you would ever be like, hey, do you want to go get something to eat? I'm like trying to pull up the mental inventory, and my brain only goes back to like the last 3 or 4 times. And then I'm always like, fucking, we always go there, because I forget that we live in Denver, or extremely close to it. And like, there's no shortage of restaurants. There are tons of options, but I don't remember that they exist. So I'm never like, oh, we should go to, you know, this place, or we should go to, you know, whatever. It's always just the same 3 or 4 things, because those are the only things I remember, because that's the last places we, you know, that we went.
The thing that I like to do, if this helps anyone, sometimes I get real bitchy when I'm hungry, and this is a problem as it is for some people. And so Graham will be like, "Where should we go? I don't know what I want." And I'm just like, well, "We need to make fucking game time decisions." And I will suggest 2 places, and he has to pick one of those or counter with a third, and that's where we're going. It usually works out.
The secret is you just pick the first one they said.
Yeah, whatever you want to do.
So yeah, something like that, can be certainly efficient and helpful for those of us in mixed neurotype relationships.
Wait, before you go down your list more, I have a question. I don't know if this is on your list, but like speaking of like your past relationships and stuff, um, how have you dealt with the fact that like people might hear this as weird, but like we don't really cook together very often and we don't eat the same thing for dinner. And like I myself even was like, well, this is kind of fucking weird when we first moved in together. How has that gone for you before?
I think part of so for us, we have like slightly different working schedules. She works like 2 or 3 hours later than I do. I am a power lifter, which means that I need to eat like 4,000 calories a day.
Which, can I tell you how happy everyone I would be if I could eat 4,000 calories a day?
You just
Like
gotta,
my little body wants to be Gilbert Grape fat so bad. That sounds incredible, but
you just got to start picking up heavy shit.
you say that like it's so easy. Shut up.
I mean,
I'm Graham. I can pick up a car. Get fucked. Shut up.
I will say that I do have good genetics for it, but point being, yeah. So I mean, anyway, the combination of I have a high caloric requirement and I'm off work a couple hours before she is, and I have no interoception, so I don't know when I'm hungry. My body doesn't tell me. The only way that I know that I'm hungry is kind of the same way that we detect exoplanets, is like I can't see it directly.
I don't want to say it sounds like you have a grandiose picture of yourself when you use a sentence like that.
I am planetary sized.
Oh my god.
Large creature. But no, we when we're seeing planets that are outside of our solar system, we can't see the planet itself directly. We just measure what happens around it. So
yes,
that's how we detect them. So the only way that I can tell that I'm hungry is I'll be like, man, I have a fucking headache and I'm super irritable and I'm just tired and what the fuck? Right, dipshit, you haven't eaten in 6 hours. So I have to kind of do that math. And so where I was going with this is, I'll finish up work and I'll just kind of be sitting there, and I'm starting to get hungry or whatever, or I assume that this is a place where a person would be getting hungry because it's, the point in the day where that comes up.
You're like a dumb kid who just started driving and you don't realize you need to stop at the gas station until the car dies.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah, this is a really fun thing. Again, there's probably an episode in this, but a lot of neurodivergent folks do not have very good interoception, so we don't really know what's going on inside of our bodies. Hunger is definitely one of those things, and like I said, if I have any sensation that I'm hungry, it's pain in my stomach because I'm fucking ravenous, because it's been 12 hours since I've eaten. Like, I have no sensation up until it's
a problem.
Yeah, exactly. It's catastrophic. So that's kind of a really fun thing. But yeah, that kind of combination of things. So I have kind of gotten into the habit of just like, I'm off of work and it's going to be dinner time. And here's the calculus, right? I can either eat something now because I need to eat something, and like I know that I'm probably hungry even though I can't tell, or I can wait for Jen to get off of work in another couple of hours, at which point it's going to be kind of late. Like it's 2 hours further, and so I probably need to eat something now. So anyway, we had a couple of strong conversations early on, shortly after we moved in together, about how like we didn't eat the same things and we didn't really eat at the same time and everything. And I was like, look, I'm not trying to be a dick about it at all. It's just like, again, the kind of overarching thread of this whole thing is like, food for me is problem solving. I'm probably hungry. I need to eat something. And I can either do that now when like I have the spoons to do it and kind of stave off being like problematically hungry later on, or I can wait for you to get off work, at which point I have to then wait for like you to finish what you're doing, like cook whatever you're going to cook now, and all of these things. And it just seems like the most expedient thing that I just get it out of the way. And so yeah, we had a little friction about that early on, but I feel like we've kind of settled into a place now where you understand that it's not anything personal and I'm not like trying to avoid you or anything like that.
Yeah. And I think the way that, like, honestly, it works for me the best is to maybe just so people don't think like, wow, you just get your way, whatever. My love and infatuation with food means I have to like really budget, and so like I have like my own like diet that I follow like most of the time during the week, and that's kind of why when we go out to eat, I'm like, I've had it, and I want to have like, an actual dinner with you and a conversation, and like
Yeah.
it's kind of like our version of doing date night, essentially.
Yeah, and I mean that's a really, I think, important thing is that like I never don't want to do that. If we've been together for 4 years, I like to spend time with you. I like to talk to you. I like to hang out with you.
This is the first time hearing. No.
This is all news. The work week for me at least, and I think that this is also true for you, is like it's such a drain, frankly. Like
Mhm.
work is a chore. I do not like what I do. And I know that you don't really like what you do. And between being neurodivergent and being a spoonie, being a disabled person, like by the time you're done with work, like I just want to lay down in a ditch somewhere and wait to decompose. I don't have the energy to like get dressed and go out and like, make decisions about where to go for dinner and make decisions about what to get for dinner once we get there. And like restaurants are often kind of sensory nightmares and all of the other shit. So for me, like the ability to have dinner as a purely problem solving thing, like I said, if I could push a button and just be like nutritioned, great,
Oh.
fantastic. Give me that. But then, the weekend comes around and we can get a little bit of rest and we can actually go out and like have a conversation
Mhm.
somewhere, and everything. And like that is nice. I like that.
I did ask you.
You did. Yep. And then I went off on a 20-minute thing about making frozen pizzas. It has been varying degrees of problematic. One of my exes was like,
Also, you don't have to answer this. Sorry, I was just curious.
no, it's not.
Okay.
It's not a thing, and it's fact.
Well, I've never asked you about it before, and then just be like, tell the listeners on the podcast. Like, I understand that might not be comfortable. So.
No, I'm good. No, I had an ex who was also a really like adventurous eater and really liked to whenever we would talk about traveling, like top of her list was food. Like I can't wait to go to street food vendors and I can't wait to go to like all these restaurants and try things that I've never even heard of and whatever else. And I was just like, oh my God, this sounds like a nightmare. I'm just gonna pack a 48 pack of flavorless protein bars and just gnaw on those until we get back. Knowing So another thing that is probably contextually relevant here is that I've obviously always been the person that I am, but I didn't know I was neurodivergent until my relationship with Jen. I discovered that I was ADHD and then shortly thereafter autistic within the last few years. So without being able to point to that, and not as an excuse, but as an explanation, be like, I can't go out to that restaurant because, in short, because I'm autistic. Without having that, I think a lot of times I just came off as being like a hyper picky eater and like kind of a pain in the ass about it, and
I've firsthand seen that. So, like, and like, even like some of my first impressions was like, geez, he's like fucking a little bit limited.
Yeah.
But like knowing more about it and like understanding, like, oh, he's not just being a dick. And I think like a lot of times people think that because I mean, it's a bias that like I wasn't as aware of. Like, I don't know, like if it was just me or if like I just seeing people do it, like you're just like they're they're not trying to be a dick. They're just trying to like honor their own boundaries.
Sure. And I was always one of the things that is really common for neurodivergent people is like kind of the way when you're undiagnosed specifically, is kind of the way your neurodivergent traits get labeled and often demonized by the people that you're around. So for me, it was never like I have, neurodivergent food issues. It was I'm like a super picky eater. And like my parents they weren't like awful about it, but they also weren't very understanding. And I would get yelled at all the time about like being such a picky eater and everything, which is part of why like I still have that baggage in the back of my head. So whenever we're trying to find a place to go out to eat, I'm always like, oh God, here we go. Like I'm going to get yelled at because I don't want to. And it's not you, it's not anything that you have done. I understand that
Every single time I just tear them apart.
just slapping me silly. But yeah, so so the answer to the question is not well. I've only really ever had the one X where it was like a kind of a thing, you know. Others have either been much more understanding about like food biases and things, or have themselves had similarly narrow palates, or just didn't care about food, you know, in that way. The one ex that I had who was like really a foodie person, I think was really bummed about it. Um, and she was not a particularly patient person, especially when it came to like her expectations being met. So I think we had a lot of kind of friction around that. And I don't think that aspect of that relationship made my issues around food, particularly in the context of food with other people, any better.
I can see
Uh,
that, yeah.
you know, so I think that probably kind of worsened some of that sort of thing, because one of the things about like, I don't want to be like I was traumatized about food, but like I kind of was traumatized about food growing up, and then you get to a point where like your parents aren't in control of your food anymore. You know, like you can kind of make your own decisions and whatever, but I think the kind of baggage and trauma and whatever kind of starts to fall away a little bit as you start to figure out, you know, your own relationship to food, and you start to realize like some of my reactions to certain stimuli are like were programmed into me by somebody else, you know, and like the way that I was treated around my own boundaries and things like that. So, you know, I learned very early on that like not that I wasn't allowed to be picky, but that being picky was going to cause problems. There was going to be friction about it. And that in my case turned into me being like very deferential about food, being like, whatever you want, let's do that, because that way I know like if you get something that you want, then that, you know, then that becomes a whole other thing, because inevitably you get people who like are at the restaurant shitting on you about how like about all you're gonna get or whatever. So it's a whole thing. But anyway, my point is that like, you know, I get a little bit older, I'm in my teens, my 20s, whatever, and I start to kind of figure out my relationship to food, and I realize that a lot of the stress that I've had in these ways was because I was sort of maltreated around it as a kid. And some of that starts to kind of melt away, and I understand where that reaction comes from and where those feelings come from and everything. And then it happens again as a grown up. You know, I thought I had this figured out. I thought I had this fixed, but now like it's happening again. So anyway, yeah, I don't think that helped a lot in terms of kind of my processing with my issues around food. But one of the sort of blessings about having not very functional memory is like, I don't remember really. So the person I'm talking about who probably wasn't helpful with my food related issues, we were together for 6 years. We lived together for like almost all of it, 5 years probably.
That was fast.
Yeah.
Wow.
The conversation was we've been together for like 4 months, and I can't remember if it was her, if it was me. I remember who said it first, but was just like, so I mean, if you don't hate me in like 8 months when your lease is up, like what happens then?
I mean, I get it. There is a little bit of a part of my psyche where it's like, I mean, pull a band-aid off, see if it fucking works or not. But like at the same time, I'm like, I made that mistake before.
I am an extremely risk averse person just in general. And I am very much not a fuck around and find out kind of person. I think except when it has come to relationships. I think when
Based on evidence presented, the jury disagrees.
you and I were different because I was largely in full control of my faculties. You know, because I think I would have been very quick to, I think that I was always very quick to like jump into relationships like fucking both feet out of like abandonment issue stuff. And with you, I never felt like that was a problem. I never felt like I was scared that you were going to just like walk out.
All right.
You know,
I guess that's a good thing, I guess.
this is far and away the like the healthiest and the most like, I was gonna say most stable. It sounds like my relationships previously were like chaotic, and they weren't. But like this has been the most grown up relationship that I've ever been in, and it only took me 38 years, I guess.
Yeah, you know, practice makes perfect.
Right. So anyway, getting back to grub, I am envious of your adventurousness with respect to food.
It's not always a good thing, man. We're what, like 48 hours from like we went out Friday night and had one of our little date nights, and I'm paying for my loosey goosiness with the food and beverage.
I mean, like better to have loved than lost, right?
I'm gonna tell that to my butt.
The alternative is to like you can't You can't only ever have good food experiences. You can either have good and bad food experiences, or you can have like,
You're right, because I always say, like, how am I gonna find out if I like it if I never try it?
true. And also it gives you a data point to know what things that you don't like are, so you can better identify the things that you do.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, yeah, my point is that like you can either have these mixed experiences or you can have no food experiences at all.
Yeah.
Hi, hello. I eat 7 things. So
But you do have the capacity to grow. I don't think it's fair to say like you don't ever, because like when we first started dating, you were like, spicy food, whatever. But like now you've sat and done like a hot ones challenge with me and my brother on Christmas. So like,
true.
yeah, it's not all a plateau.
Yeah, which is sort of related to the thing, and like one of the things that I think people sometimes find frustrating, especially food oriented people, is like
Humans that eat.
yeah, but no, like kind of foodie people, right? Is that like if we, I mean, how many times have you said to me like, oh, you like X, you know what I mean, in a way to remind me that like that I like a thing or whatever, and I'm like, ooh, but this is a different restaurant. They might make it differently. It might, and so that uncertainty is a really hard thing for me to get around, because even if I know what the ingredients are in a particular meal, like I don't know how they're preparing it. There might be things that they don't mention in the ingredients. Like there have definitely been times where, I'll be like, oh, I want this food item and I get it. And there's something about it that was not advertised as being in it. And I'm like, oh, now I'm
gonna put this out into the universe. The best example of this, and I also don't like it when this happens, is when you order a quesadilla and it says like, just cheese or whatever, and then it comes out with all kinds of stuff in it that isn't, and you're just like, but like quesadilla, bro.
Yeah,
it's simple.
It's literally 2 ingredients. It's just the queso and the dia, Yeah, and there's like a bunch of stuff in there. The one that like really I will never forget is we went into a place and they were like cheese quesadilla on the menu, and it was basically just that and a price or whatever. And I was like, okay, I can do that. And it arrived, and inside of the tortillas was the cheese as advertised, but there was also pico de gallo, which is already like 4 different things that I didn't order, and mushrooms. There were mushrooms in this thing. We have talked a little bit about my aversion to textures and everything. Mushrooms are not my favorite thing.
I haven't liked mushrooms, and if that came in a quesadilla I ordered, I'd be like, the fuck?
Yeah, I was not very pleased by that. So we have never been back to that restaurant.
Which kind of sucks because they have really good tamales.
And the worst part of this is, again, a great illustration of kind of how restaurants work for us as a pair, is like, I think that I had already scoured the menu and that cheese quesadilla was it. I think that was like the, and I don't like to make work for people. I don't like to.
He will not mod things, you guys. It makes me want to die.
Can't do it. I have the hardest
industry. Like, it's not a big deal.
No, and I know that. I understand that, and like it happens all the time. And the chef is not back there rolling his eyes and being like, "This fucking guy" or whatever. And invariably, like if I were to have a modification to a food, I'm making it simpler. I'm having them take things like just don't do these 2 steps or whatever. So it's really not that big of a thing. But like, yeah, I don't have it in me to either be like, can I have X without Y, or once it arrives, if it doesn't work for me for whatever reason, to send it back. I can't do that. I'll just be like, oh fuck, you know what? I thought I was way hungrier than I am, and I don't know. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Because people pleasing and I, whatever else. But yeah, so again, restaurants are tough. I don't expect you to give me like a complete, line by line. I don't want to see the recipe. You know what I mean? Certain things, like it's hard to fuck up cheese pizza, right? Like if I go just about anywhere, I pretty much know what's going to happen when I say, hey, cheese, I'll have the cheese pizza. I pretty much know what's going to be there. And in that case, the disappointments and the like unwelcome surprises tend to be pretty small. It's like, oh, this cheese isn't that good, or like the sauce is really sweet or something, but I can manage. But there are definitely ways to kind of describe food items that are a little bit misleading, or like they don't, it's hard to tell without a picture sometimes. To kind of like see what it is that I'm going to be getting. And I because I have such a narrow palate, I don't know what a lot of food things are. Like,
this actually surprises me. Like at the times you'd be like, I don't want that, and I'm like, do you know what it is? And you say no.
No idea.
You are such a research crazy data hungry nerd. And then the fact that you're just, I don't know what that is, and it's like, well, there's a very simple way to find out. Like, you have a fucking Google computer right in your phone.
Sure, and I have definitely done that. Like in restaurants or whatever, just be like, oh, what the fuck is, this
Mm-hmm.
item? Just to like kind of get a look at what it's gonna, what it's gonna look like, and what kind of what to expect. But yeah, I mean that just kind of bottoms out at the same place. It's the uncertainties. I don't know if I don't know exactly what it's gonna be, I have a hard time with it. And sometimes, usually depending on like how well rested I am and how kind of like how spoony I am at the time, sometimes it's easier for me to be like,
Yeah.
we'll give it a shot. We'll give it a whirl. There have definitely been times where I am just at the bottom of my reservoir and I'm like, at another time I probably would, but right now I can't,
Yeah, I feel like I definitely started to notice that and be able to tell the difference at some point because, like, there are times if I'll order something, I'm like, well, I know you like this, so I think you'll like this, and like you'll try it. And then there are other times where you're just like, I've never heard that fucking word and I will not eat that. And it's like,
Yeah.
all right, it's one of those days.
It do be like that. Yeah, so that's kind of a tough thing. And that does actually lead me more or less directly into one of the other things I wanted to talk about, which is leftovers.
My God.
Mhm.
You guys, I'm spoiled in a sea of leftovers if we ever do go out to eat.
There is some research that shows that like that food that sits for a while, even if it's like refrigerated or whatever, like I don't know if it's histamine, there's like something that increases in food that like is left for a little while and then is reheated or whatever. I almost without exception will never have leftovers. I don't want it. We're at a restaurant, I don't want a box, I'm not going to take it home, I'm not going to eat it. Like if I'm not done with it right now, then it's not for me. And part of that is also the kind of uncertainty thing because I feel like if you like reheat food at home or whatever, it never tastes the same as it did in the restaurant.
No, it's not the same. I mean, that's just chemistry. Stuff starts
Right.
changing over time too. So it's like whatever. But
Right. And so that's exactly it, is like, I don't the only times that I have really ever kind of reheated things were times when like it was the only thing I had in the house and like I couldn't manage a grocery store trip or like for whatever reason I had
he was out of crackers and
Yeah.
Soylent.
Right. The nutrition sludge machine was broken. But yeah, can't do leftovers, can't deal with it. And I realize that it's like kind of a weird thing, whatever. Food in particular is obviously a really kind of charged thing for me because it was not ever easy growing up. To have the feelings that I had and to have the boundaries that I had around food. Food is probably one of those kind of places where I tend to think of a lot of my neurodivergent traits that affect it as being like childish or silly or, like there are definitely other places where I'm like, no, that's just because that's the way my brain works or whatever. But when it comes down to food, there's always like a little bit of that, like I'm just being like a stupid little kid or I'm just being a baby or whatever else about it. But yeah, no leftovers definitely is one of those things. I guess the good thing is there's always stuff for you. But yeah, invariably they'll be like, oh, do you want a box? And I'm like, does she want a box? If you want anything here, we'll take it. Happy to do that. But I do not. I think one of the only places that I feel like I can get away with leftovers is like specifically Domino's pizza for whatever reason tends to reheat, probably because it's absolutely chock full of preservatives and you could sit a slice of Domino's on the shelf and it'd be like that guy bought a burger in like 1988 and it's just like still sitting somewhere.
I think it will look the same. I don't think it would taste the same.
Probably not. But yeah, I think, I don't know, either because it's super full of preservatives or because I can turn the oven up way high and just like crisp the fuck out of it. And then it's,
Yeah, you tricked me into burning the Domino's leftovers last time. You were like 10 minutes and I pulled it out and it was like black. And I was like, I thought you knew. Like, I just blindly trusted you.
Sorry.
Crisp, y'all.
Crunchy.
Carbonated, motherfucking, just sad. Carbonized.
There it is.
Excuse me. I know words.
There it is. I guess, is it lunchtime? No, is it?
I mean, I did eat the leftovers from breakfast yesterday, this morning. So, yeah, I guess I should start thinking about what I'm going to have for lunch. What are you going to have for lunch?
No, that's not right. That's another thing that actually stresses me the fuck out is whenever
I love you.
I love you. Whenever we are, and this isn't just you, this is anyone. Whenever I'm in a restaurant and someone that I'm there with turns to me and goes, well, what are you going to get? Please don't do that. That is such a stressful question. And I honestly can't even answer why it is. It's just whenever
I used to ask you a lot because in my previous relationships, a lot of the times, like I would always get one thing, and then my partner might get another thing, and then you can share,
Sure.
and you get to try twice as many foods.
Sure. Yeah.
That ain't fucking happening up in
Yeah,
here.
that's not. Sorry about it. I hope you felt like trying some cheese pizza because I will have.
I mean,
whatever.
sometimes I am trying some cheese pizza, but you don't want whatever I have.
I will have whatever combination of wheat and hot dairy is on the menu. Yeah, that I hate that question. I feel like a deer in the headlights with that one.
I mean, I was being facetious, so don't worry about it.
No, I know. I'm not. I understand that. And
all right, well, that was our talk about food.
that was our talk about food, y'all. What's the spiel? Like, subscribe. Tell us in the comments if you liked this workout. Join us on the I don't know what that means app.
We don't have any of those things.
We don't have any of those things. We don't.
This is the part where we say goodbye.
Right. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Hope you enjoy your lunch.
Thanks for tuning in. You can find us on social media on Instagram at idkwhatthatmeans.podcast. Or if you happen to be on Blue Sky, idkwhatthatmeans.bsky.social. Or you can contact us by email at idkwhatthatmeans.podcast@gmail.com.
We hope you have fun or learn something. Probably not both, but hopefully both.
Probably not both.
Anyways, thanks for listening to I Don't Know What That Means.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.